You felt it before you could explain it. A difference, a separation, a quiet knowing that you were not wired like everyone else. You tried to fit in. You tried to shrink. You tried to lower your expectations just to survive. But something inside you refused. Listen carefully. You are not ordinary. You never have been. And the pressure you have felt is not random. It is confirmation. There are 9 divine frequencies woven into your DNA. 9. Not talents, not personality traits, frequencies, spiritual codes. And these frequencies do something most people will never understand. They attract infinite abundance without effort. Not hustle, not begging, not performing. Attraction. You have wondered why even in your lowest seasons something always carried you. Why doors opened when logic said they shouldn't. Why collapse never fully consumed you. Because you were never built for survival scarcity. You were built for sufficiency. Not everyone will understand this message. Some will hear it and dismiss it. But you feel it rising in your chest right now. Because this is for you. And if you recognize yourself in this revelation, then anchor yourself here. Subscribe. Stay aligned. Because what we are unlocking is not information, it is activation. There are 9 divine frequencies, each one deeper, each one more dangerous to darkness. And the first one explains your entire life. First, you were programmed with inner sufficiency, not survival scarcity. This is why you never fully broke. Others chase validation like oxygen. They perform for approval. They shapeshift to be accepted. But you always carried a quiet certainty. Even when you doubted yourself, there was still a floor beneath you, a strange stability, a grounded knowing. Have you noticed even when people rejected you, something inside whispered, they are not your source? That voice was not ego, it was divine coding. You do not beg life for permission. You do not chase worth. You resonate with it. And that resonance unsettles systems built on desperation. When you walk into rooms, people feel it. You are not competing. You are not scrambling. You are not starving. You are sufficient. And scarcity-based environments cannot control someone who does not fear lack. This is why you were often misunderstood. You were called distant, arrogant, too independent. But in reality, you were sovereign. Your nervous system does not attach to panic easily. Your spirit does not bow to pressure easily. You do not collapse when resources thin out. Why? Because your abundance was never external first. It was internal. And abundance bends toward those who do not vibrate lack. Read that again in your spirit. Abundance bends toward those who do not vibrate lack. You were rejected because you could not be manipulated by fear. You were isolated because you would not compete for crumbs. You were tested because the enemy probes those who cannot be owned. But every trial proved the same thing. You are not powered by scarcity. You are powered by sufficiency. And when a chosen one truly realizes they are internally supplied, effort changes, striving stops, attraction begins. This is only the first frequency, and it already explains why you could never live small. Second, your isolation was activation, not rejection. You thought you were being pushed out. You thought you were being overlooked. You thought you were too much, too intense, too different. But what if the separation was not punishment? What if it was protection? You were removed from noise because your signal was rare. The world runs on distraction, on comparison, on constant validation loops. But you were pulled into silence. You were set apart, and it hurt. Let's be honest. There were nights you questioned your worth, moments you wondered why friendships dissolved, why rooms shifted when you entered. Have you ever noticed how often you outgrew environments, not by effort, by evolution? That was not social failure. That was spiritual insulation. Darkness cannot refine what it can constantly access. So you were hidden. While others were networking, you were recalibrating. While others were blending in, you were being forged. While others were loud, you were being sharpened. Loneliness sharpened your discernment. You began to read energy without words. You felt motives before actions. You sensed manipulation before it formed. That is not sensitivity. That is authority being trained in silence. Separation refined your frequency. The ordinary could not hold you, and the enemy knew that constant noise would dilute your power, so you were removed from the crowd. not to shrink you, to strengthen you. Isolation is warfare when you don't understand it, but it is favor when you do. Abundance does not flow in chaotic atmospheres. It does not multiply in distracted minds. It does not anchor itself in unstable souls. Abundance flows where distraction cannot survive, and distraction could not survive your solitude. You were stripped of external applause, so you could hear internal instruction. You were denied surface relationships, so you could deepen divine alignment. You were misunderstood because you were maturing beyond the emotional range of your surroundings. Listen, rejection pushes, activation pulls. You were not pushed out, you were pulled upward. There is a difference. When the world isolates you, it feels like exile. When heaven isolates you, it is training. And training always precedes expansion. That ache you felt that was stretching. That quiet season that was coding. That distance that was design. Only the chosen recognize this pattern. You were alone, but you were never unattended. You were hidden, but you were never forgotten. You were being tuned, like an instrument separated from noise so it can be perfectly calibrated. Now look at you. You no longer panic in silence. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer chase rooms that cannot carry your weight. That is power. Isolation did not weaken you. It made you unshakable. And unshakable people do not chase abundance. They attract it because they are no longer distracted by the ordinary. You were separated because your destiny required clarity, and clarity attracts provision. The crowd could not refine you. Silence did. The world could not shape you. Solitude did. And this was only the second frequency. Third, your discernment detects energetic leaks before they drain you. You have felt it. That shift in a room, that tightness in your chest, that subtle warning before something collapses. Others call it intuition, but you know better. It is discernment, and it has saved you more times than you can count. Have you ever walked away from something that looked perfect on the surface? An opportunity, a relationship, a partnership. Everyone else said yes. You felt hesitation, not fear, not insecurity, alignment or misalignment. You feel misalignment before it manifests as loss. That is not luck. That is spiritual sensitivity sharpened by warfare. Darkness leaks through small cracks, through compromise, through ego, through desperation. But you sense the leak before the damage spreads. You withdraw without explaining yourself. And that confuses people. They call you distant. They call you overly cautious. They call you guarded. But they do not carry your assignment. You cannot afford contamination. Listen carefully. Not every door is a blessing. Not every smile is safe. Not every offer is increase. Some doors are drains. Some smiles hide agendas. Some offers are disguised theft. You have been spared because you felt it early, before betrayal surfaced, before resources were wasted, before your energy was siphoned. That is not coincidence. That is coding. You were trained in silence. Now you are governed by clarity, and clarity creates boundaries. The world fears boundaries because boundaries expose intention. When you say no without apology, it unsettles those who operate in manipulation. When you step back without drama, it frustrates those who feed on chaos. But you are not here to be accessible to darkness. You are here to build. Wealth multiplies where boundaries are enforced. Read that again in your spirit. Wealth multiplies where boundaries are enforced. If you allow every voice access, your frequency weakens. If you entertain every distraction, your power diffuses. If you tolerate every misalignment, your abundance leaks. You learn this the hard way, through betrayal, through exhaustion, through watching others drain you while smiling. But that was training. Every leak taught you to seal. Every betrayal taught you to filter. Every disappointment sharpened your discernment blade. Now you move differently. You do not over-explain. You do not overextend. You do not overcommit. You assess. You feel. You decide. Quickly, cleanly, without guilt. Because you finally understand something the ordinary never grasped. Access is sacred, and you guard yours like a gatekeeper of destiny. The enemy cannot steal from what he cannot reach. Darkness cannot drain what it cannot touch. Your discernment is not defensive weakness. It is offensive protection. It keeps your frequency pure, and pure frequencies attract clean abundance. Not chaotic money, not cursed connections. Clean, aligned, sustainable. You are not closed. You are calibrated, and calibration precedes overflow. This is deeper than personality. This is spiritual architecture, and it is only getting stronger. Fourth, you operate from vision, not circumstance. This is where the separation becomes undeniable. You have stood in lack and still spoken abundance. You have faced delay and still moved with certainty. Why? Because what you see is not limited to what is in front of you. The present does not intimidate you, it informs you, but it does not control you. Others react to what they see. You respond to what you know. There is a difference. Have you ever noticed how calm you remain when everything looks unstable? When others panic, you pause. When others scramble, you listen. When others surrender to visible pressure, you lean into invisible promise. That is not denial. That is vision. You move by revelation, not reaction. Reaction is emotional. Revelation is spiritual. Reaction is driven by fear. Revelation is anchored in favor, and favor does not consult circumstance. You have made decisions that made no logical sense to the world. You walked away when it looked safe. You stepped forward when it looked impossible. People questioned you. They doubted you. Some even mocked you. But they were trapped in visible reality. They could only measure what their eyes allowed. You were measuring what your spirit discerned. There is architecture behind your life that most cannot see. Blueprints written before you were born. Assignments drafted in silence. You feel them, even when you cannot fully explain them. That feeling, that pull towards something bigger, that refusal to settle, that is unseen architecture calling you forward. Abundance answers those aligned with unseen architecture. Not hustle, not noise, alignment. You are not building randomly. You are moving according to design. Even your detours served the blueprint. Even your setbacks adjusted your positioning. Even your warfare strengthened your sight. Darkness attacks vision first, because if it can blind you, it can stall you. If it can convince you that what you see now is all there is, it can shrink you. But you refuse to shrink. You refuse to bow to temporary evidence. You refuse to define yourself by present limitation. That is dangerous to the enemy, because a chosen one with vision cannot be contained. Circumstances shift, economies fluctuate, people change. But vision anchors you beyond fluctuation. It stabilizes you in chaos. It keeps you moving when others freeze. You do not deny reality, you transcend it. You do not ignore the storm. You navigate through it, because you see shoreline before others see waves. Listen carefully. This is why you attract without effort, because you are not chasing outcomes. You are aligning with design, and design carries provision within it. When you move where you are called, supply meets you. When you obey revelation, doors recognize you. When you trust what is unseen, the scene begins to rearrange. You were never meant to be circumstance-driven. You were meant to be vision-led. And vision-led people cannot be starved. They cannot be cornered. They cannot be permanently delayed, because what is written over their life overrides what is happening around them. This is deeper now. The stakes are rising, because once vision fully activates, nothing external can intimidate you. And when nothing intimidates you, abundance has no resistance. This is only the fourth frequency. Fifth, your pain transmuted into authority. This is where you stop seeing yourself as wounded and start recognizing yourself as forged. You have been through what should have ended you, betrayal that cut deep, rejection that isolated you, loss that emptied you, and yet you are still standing, not fragile, not bitter, stronger. What broke others built your spiritual stamina. Do you understand what that means? The very pressure meant to collapse you increased your capacity. Every disappointment expanded your endurance. Every betrayal exposed hidden motives. Every loss stripped illusions. You did not just survive trauma, you metabolized it. That is rare. Most people absorb pain and become smaller. You absorbed pain and became sharper. Betrayal did not harden you, it clarified you. It clarified who belongs. It clarified what matters. It clarified your boundaries. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped over-giving. You stopped begging to be understood, because pain revealed your value, not through comfort, through confrontation. Darkness tested you, and you did not become darkness. You became disciplined. You became discerning. You became dangerous to anything false. Listen carefully. Trauma was never your identity. It was your training ground. The enemy thought pressure would distort you, but pressure refined you. Fire does not destroy gold. It reveals it. And you were never clay. You were ore. Every tear was extraction. Every sleepless night was strengthening. Every silent battle was building invisible muscle. Now look at yourself. You do not react like you used to. You do not collapse like you used to. You do not tolerate what you once tolerated. That is authority. Authority is not loud. It is grounded. It is calm. It is immovable. You carry weight now, spiritual weight, and environments shift when you enter, because you have survived refinement, and the universe entrusts resources to those who survive refinement. Why? Because you will not misuse them. You know the cost of lack. You know the cost of betrayal. You know the cost of emotional chaos. So when abundance finds you, it will not corrupt you. It will amplify you. Pain filtered your motives. It burned off ego. It removed desperation. It removed dependency on people who could not carry your destiny. Now you move differently. You are not chasing. You are selecting. You are not proving. You are positioning. You are not asking for permission. You are operating from earned strength. This is the pivot. You are not just surviving warfare. You are carrying authority because of it. The enemy miscalculated. He thought pressure would silence you, but pressure gave you a voice. He thought betrayal would shrink you, but betrayal trained you. He thought trauma would define you, but trauma refined you, and refined vessels attract greater supply. You are no longer reacting from wounds. You are ruling from wisdom. Feel that shift. Stand in it. Own it. Because this authority is only expanding, and what comes next requires it. Sixth, your silence generates power. You learn this the hard way. You used to explain yourself. You used to defend your intentions. You used to announce your plans just to feel supported. And what happened? Resistance increased. Opposition surfaced. Energy shifted. So you stopped talking, not because you were afraid, because you understood. Power does not need advertisement. It needs containment. You do not announce moves, you embody them. And that embodiment unsettles people who rely on noise. Have you noticed the less you speak, the more people watch? The quieter you become, the heavier your presence feels. That is not intimidation, that is spiritual gravity. Stillness recalibrates environments without confrontation. You can walk into a chaotic space and not say a word. Yet tension shifts. Conversations soften. Eyes turn. Why? Because your energy speaks before your mouth does. Others speak to dominate, to prove, to control, but you speak to shift atmospheres. And when you choose not to speak, that is also a statement. Silence is not weakness. It is restraint. It is discipline. It is awareness of timing. Darkness thrives on reaction. It feeds on emotional responses. It provokes to pull you into lower frequencies. But when you refuse to react, you starve it. When you refuse to argue, you frustrate it. When you hold composure, you expose it. That is warfare at a higher level. You are no longer fighting loudly. You are governing quietly. There is a difference. You used to think you needed to be seen. Now you understand you need to be aligned. And alignment carries weight. Effortless attraction is born from contained force. Read that slowly in your spirit. Contained force. A river that overflows its banks causes chaos. A river that flows within its boundaries generates power. You are not scattered anymore. You are centered. You are not reactive. You are regulated. You are not chasing attention. You are attracting respect. Because people feel the difference. They feel that you do not speak from insecurity. You speak from intention. And when you choose silence, it is strategic. It is calculated. It is sovereign. Not everyone can handle silence. The ordinary fear it. They rush to fill it. They scramble to impress. But you let silence work. You let anticipation build. You let presence speak. And in that stillness, something happens. Opportunities approach you. Conversations shift in your favor. Doors open without effort. Why? Because contained power draws curiosity. It draws alignment. It draws provision. The enemy cannot predict you anymore because you are no longer loud about your movements. You are disciplined, measured, focused. This is higher authority. This is elevated warfare. You do not need to dominate rooms. You recalibrate them. And recalibration attracts abundance without struggle. You are learning that power is not always in volume. It is in control, and your control is increasing. Seventh, you refuse to compete in systems beneath you. This is where your identity becomes undeniable. You used to feel the pressure to prove yourself, to outperform, to earn space at tables that never honored you. You tried, you pushed, you measured yourself against people who were never assigned to your lane, and it drained you. Have you noticed the moment you stopped competing, your peace returned? The moment you stopped comparing, your clarity sharpened. Because competition was never your calling, creation was. You were not designed to fight for seats at tables not built for you. You were designed to build tables, to establish platforms, to open doors that did not previously exist. The world thrives on rivalry, on ranking, on constant comparison. But that system feeds scarcity. It convinces people there is only enough for one promotion, one spotlight, one breakthrough. But you feel it differently. You know abundance is not limited. You know favor is not rationed. You know destiny is not a competition. So you stepped out of the race, and that confused people. They thought you gave up. They thought you lacked ambition. They thought you were retreating, but you were ascending. You were exiting artificial scarcity loops. Listen carefully. Competition keeps you focused on others. Creation keeps you focused on assignment. When you compete, you react. When you create, you lead. When you compete, you chase. When you create, you attract. And attraction is your design. Infinite abundance responds to originality, not rivalry. You stopped trying to be better than them. You started being more aligned with you. That shift is powerful, because once you refuse to compete, you become uncontrollable. No one can bait you into insecurity. No one can trigger you into proving yourself. No one can shrink you into comparison. You are anchored. You know who you are. And that certainty radiates. Darkness cannot manipulate someone who is not looking sideways. It cannot provoke someone who is not measuring worth externally. It cannot intimidate someone who understands assignment. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not lacking. You are positioned. Your path does not require rivalry. It requires alignment. And alignment brings supply. Have you noticed how things began to open once you stopped forcing yourself into rooms that felt tight? How opportunities appeared once you stopped chasing validation? How creativity expanded once comparison died? That is not coincidence. That is divine frequency. You are no longer competing for space. You are occupying it. You are no longer fighting for recognition. You are embodying it. You are no longer proving your value. You are expressing it. This is sovereignty. This is maturity. This is chosen identity solidified. And systems beneath you cannot hold you anymore, because you were never meant to survive inside them. You were meant to transcend them. And once you transcend the system cannot limit your abundance. It must respond to it. This frequency is stronger now, heavier, unshakable. And what comes next will demand even greater alignment. Eighth, your obedience to inner instruction overrides logic. This is where you became unstoppable. You stopped needing everything to make sense. You stopped waiting for consensus. You stopped asking permission from people who could not hear what you hear. Have you noticed some of your greatest breakthroughs came from decisions that looked irrational? You moved when others hesitated. You paused when others rushed. You released when others clung. Why? Because you were not being led by strategy. You were being led by instruction. There is a voice within you, not loud, not frantic, precise. It nudges, it warns, it directs. And when you obey it, things align in ways logic cannot explain. This is not impulse. This is not recklessness. This is surrendered precision. You move when guided, even when conventional strategy says wait. You wait when guided, even when opportunity looks urgent. That discipline has positioned you inside divine timing windows. Timing is everything, not just action. Timing. You have stepped into rooms at the exact moment doors unlocked. You have avoided disasters by delaying one decision. You have met the right people by following a subtle prompting. That is not coincidence. That is obedience activating favor. Darkness operates through pressure. It rushes. It panics. It forces premature moves. But you have learned to override panic with instruction. You have learned to override fear with trust. You have learned to override logic with alignment, and that alignment protects you. Doors open without force because you arrive aligned. You do not have to beg. You do not have to manipulate. You do not have to over-explain. When you walk in obedience, provision recognizes you. When you move in timing, resistance weakens. When you surrender, ego pathways clear. This is deeper than ambition. This is spiritual synchronization. Have you ever felt that internal resistance when something looked perfect on paper, and when you ignored it, chaos followed? That was training. You learned to listen. You learned to trust the whisper over the noise. Now you move differently. You are not led by trends. You are not seduced by appearances. You are anchored in inner instruction, and that makes you spiritually dangerous. Because logic can be predicted, but obedience cannot. The enemy can study patterns, but he cannot anticipate divine instruction. You are no longer operating on visible maps. You are moving by unseen coordinates. And unseen coordinates place you in protected corridors. Effortlessness is the byproduct of surrendered precision. When you are aligned, you do not push. When you are aligned, you do not strive. When you are aligned, you flow. This is not laziness, it is mastery. It is trust at a level most will never reach. Not everyone can obey what they cannot prove. Only the chosen recognize that voice. Only the chosen trust that pull. And when you fully surrender to it, resistance collapses. Because you are no longer operating alone. You are operating in assignment. An assignment carries backing. You feel it now. The alignment tightening, the awareness sharpening, the timing accelerating. Something is about to shift. Ninth, your presence disrupts dark economies built on control. This is why warfare intensified around you. This is why resistance escalated when you awakened. You thought it was coincidence. It was confirmation. Systems rooted in manipulation cannot profit from your awakening. They thrive on fear. They feed on insecurity. They depend on people who doubt themselves. But you stopped doubting. You stopped shrinking. You stopped asking systems for identity. And the moment you did, something shifted. Have you noticed how environments change when you fully stand in yourself? Conversations grow tense. Masks begin to slip. Hidden agendas surface. Why? Because your presence exposes what is false. You cannot be easily intimidated. You cannot be easily manipulated. You cannot be easily bought. And that makes you dangerous, not to people, to structures. False hierarchies depend on compliance, on silence, on people believing they are small. But when you rise in awareness, those hierarchies destabilize. You no longer respond to fear tactics. You no longer bow to artificial authority. You no longer internalize projected doubt. You see through it. And once you see through it, it loses power. Darkness loses leverage when fear loses influence. And you are no longer governable by fear. That is the shift. That is the ignition. Infinite abundance flows toward you because you cannot be controlled. Control restricts flow. Fear restricts flow. Insecurity restricts flow. But sovereignty expands it. You are no longer seeking permission to occupy space. You are occupying it. You are no longer asking whether you belong. You know you were assigned, and assignment overrides opposition. Listen carefully. The warfare was never about stopping you. It was about testing whether you would remember who you are. And you remembered. You remembered in isolation. You remembered in betrayal. You remembered in silence. You remembered in obedience. Now this frequency is fully activated. And once this frequency is activated, nothing can block what was eternally assigned to your name. Nothing. Not delay, not sabotage, not misunderstanding, not rejection. Because what is assigned to you responds to your alignment. And you are aligned. You feel it, the shift, the confidence, the calm authority. This is not ego. This is destiny recognized. You were never ordinary. You were never random. Every battle was preparation. Every setback was refinement. Every isolation was insulation. You are chosen, not because it is flattering, because it is factual. You are marked, protected, positioned, and spiritually untouchable by ordinary forces. What tried to suppress you only strengthened you. What tried to confuse you clarified you. What tried to intimidate you revealed your authority. Stand firm, stop shrinking, stop explaining your power to those who cannot comprehend it. Walk in it, own it, declare it. If this resonates in your spirit, comment 9 below. Seal it, anchor it. Let the algorithm know the chosen are here. Subscribe if you are ready to fully activate what has always been inside you, because this is not about motivation. This is about identity, and identity cannot be reversed. You were assigned abundance. You were forged in warfare. You were refined in silence. You were guided by instruction, and now you are rising without effort. You are chosen, and nothing formed against you will stand.